The Colorado River gives water to 40 million people across 7 states. It waters 5.5 million acres of farmland that grow 90% of America's winter vegetables. It fills the taps in Las Vegas, Phoenix, San Diego, and Denver. And right now, the river is making roughly 12 million acre-feet of water per year. The legal deals say it owes 16.5 million. That is a gap of 4.5 million acre-feet every single year, with no plan to close it. The 2 largest reservoirs in the United States are draining toward levels where the dams physically stop working. And the 7 states that depend on this water just missed their second federal deadline to agree on what comes next. That deadline passed on February 14th, 2026. No deal. The reservoirs kept dropping, and 40 million people are now heading into the biggest year for Western water in a generation. The reason the gap exists comes down to a single bad bet made over 100 years ago. In 1922, officials split the Colorado River based on flow data from the wettest 20-year stretch in 500 years. Tree ring scientists have since proven the river's true long-term average is closer to 14.8 million acre-feet, not the 16.5 million that was promised. Every dam, every canal, every city and farm built since then was sized to a river that never really existed. And under current warming, the river has averaged just 12.4 million since the year 2000. Here is where things stand right now. Lake Powell, the second largest reservoir in the country, sits behind Glen Canyon Dam in northern Arizona. As of March 2026, it stands at 3,530 feet above sea level, 26% full, down nearly 32 feet from a year ago. The number that matters is 3,490 feet. That is minimum power pool, the level below which the dam's 8 turbines cannot make electricity. 40 feet of room. And the Bureau of Reclamation's own February 2026 forecasts show Powell could reach that line by December of this year. Under dry conditions, it drops below it. When Glen Canyon Dam loses the ability to make power, roughly 1 million homes across the Southwest lose part of their electricity. But the power is almost beside the point. The dam controls the flow of the entire upper basin's water to the lower basin. If Powell drops low enough, the system that moves water across half the American West starts to break down. The Bureau has already started making emergency moves. Since December 2025, it has been holding back monthly releases, keeping 598,000 acre-feet through April. Officials are thinking about an emergency release of 500,000 acre-feet from Flaming Gorge Reservoir upstream in Wyoming as early as May. These are not normal moves. These are the kind of steps you take when the system is reaching its physical limits. Upper Basin Director Wayne Pullen said it straight. Unless Mother Nature is very generous, Lake Powell levels are going to bounce around at levels that we are not comfortable with. The math behind that worry is simple. The 30-year average inflow to Lake Powell is 9.6 million acre-feet per year. The 2026 forecast is 5.02 million, just 52% of normal. The planned release downstream is 7.48 million. More water is leaving than coming in. And it is not close. This is where the picture gets harder to read. Downstream, Lake Mead holds roughly 28% of its water at 1,062 feet. It hit a record low of 1,040 feet in July 2022, setting off the first ever federal shortage order. A wet 2023 winter lifted it about 16 feet. That relief is over. The Bureau now expects Mead could fall to 1,038 feet by June 2027, a new all-time low. To put those numbers in plain terms, Lake Mead's full level is 1,225 feet. It currently sits 163 feet below that. And Deadpool, the level where water can no longer flow through Hoover Dam on its own, is 895 feet. The reservoir is closer to Deadpool than it is to full, and it has been dropping for most of the last 25 years. A level 1 shortage is already in place for 2026. Arizona is giving up 512,000 acre-feet this year, 18% of what it normally gets. Nevada is losing 21,000. Mexico is giving up 80,000. And if Mead keeps dropping, the cuts get deeper. A level 2 shortage sets off more cuts. Below 1,025 feet, the federal government gains the power to step in on its own. So both reservoirs are falling. The forecast is bad, and the people who are supposed to be working out a fix cannot agree on one. The current rules that decide how Colorado River water is shared expire at the end of 2026. 7 states were supposed to work out new ones. They have failed twice. They missed a November 2025 deadline. They missed a second one on Valentine's Day 2026. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum has warned the federal government will make its own plan by October 1st, 2026, whether the states agree or not. On January 9th, 2026, the Bureau of Reclamation released a 1,600-page draft report laying out 5 choices. The options range from doing nothing to forcing up to 4 million acre-feet in cuts during extreme drought. The Bureau chose not to pick a favorite. The fight splits along basin lines. The Upper Basin, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico wants Lake Powell releases tied to how much water actually flows in, not to how much the Lower Basin wants. Their case is simple. The Lower Basin used too much for decades and drained the reservoirs. Why should the Upper Basin pay for that? The Lower Basin, Arizona, California, and Nevada has promised 1.5 million acre-feet per year in average savings, but says the Upper Basin must also agree to binding cuts. A meeting of all 7 governors in Washington on February 3, 2026, ended with nothing. By March, both sides had sent what reporters called fiery letters blasting the federal draft. The Upper Colorado River Commission accused the Interior Department of overstepping. Arizona lawmakers called the plans devastating. Brenda Berman, head of the Central Arizona Project, warned we may break the compact in 2026, and almost certainly it will be broken in 2027. Several states are getting ready for lawsuits. The system of teamwork that held for a century is falling apart in real time. The 2023 deal that bought time is about to run out. California, Arizona, and Nevada promise to save 3 million acre-feet through 2026, backed by $1.2 billion in federal money. As of late 2024, total savings came to roughly 2 million acre-feet in Lake Mead. The money is running out. The deal ends in December, and there is nothing to take its place. On top of that, the Bureau of Reclamation does not even have a Senate-confirmed leader running the process. The Trump pick, Ted Cook, pulled out in September 2025 after pushback from Upper Basin Republican senators. Acting head Scott Cameron is in charge. The most important water talks in American history are being run by a fill-in. And while the states argue, people on the ground are already living with the results. In Pinal County, Arizona, about an hour south of Phoenix, farmers holding junior water rights through the Central Arizona Project Canal have lost 87% of their surface water since 2021. Nancy Kaywood, a third-generation farmer working 247 acres, pointed at a field of dead alfalfa and told reporters it is heart-wrenching. "We are not making one dime off this farm right now, but we are trying to hang on because this is what we love." Will Thielander, a fourth-generation farmer in the same county, lost half his water and has left nearly half of his family's 6,000 acres empty. He dropped cotton entirely and started growing guayule, a drought-tough rubber plant, trying to find anything that lives on less water. Across Pinal County, farmers have left roughly 117,000 acres bare, more than half the county's farmable land. Losses top $200 million and around 1,000 jobs. Farming uses roughly 70 to 80% of all water taken from the Colorado River. The Imperial Irrigation District in Southern California alone holds rights to 3.1 million acre-feet, more than whole states receive, watering 470,000 acres that bring in over $3 billion a year. Livestock feed crops, alfalfa, and hay and pasture grasses make up roughly 60% of all farm water use in the basin. The money math creates a tension that nobody has solved. A 2024 study put the direct yearly value of Colorado River water at $20.6 billion. $18.3 billion of that comes from city use, $1.4 billion from farming, $874 million from dam power. Cities make far more money per acre-foot than farms. But when farms go away, so do the small towns, local food systems, and family ways of life built around them. Arizona passed a first-of-its-kind law in July 2025, letting home builders buy water rights from retiring farmers. A New York hedge fund called Water Asset Management spent $100 million buying nearly 13,000 acres of Arizona farmland, sparking fears of a corporate water grab. Colorado has already lost 850,000 acres of watered farmland, 25% of its total. over the past 30 years as cities buy up water rights. The pattern is clear. Water flows toward money, and cities have more of it, and the effects do not stay on the farm. North of Scottsdale. In the small community of Rio Verde foothills, roughly 1,000 people lost their water entirely on January 1st, 2023. When Scottsdale stopped trucking water to the area, Leigh Harris Averill put in a $14,000 rainwater catch system and watched her costs jump 219%. Cody Rames said his family had 2 weeks of water left. Arizona later allowed a water company to build lasting pipes, but the event showed what happens when towns built on the idea of plenty crash into the truth of shortage. And Rio Verde is not alone. Across the West, housing areas approved during wetter times are finding out that the water they were promised may not be there. In the Imperial Valley, every acre-foot of water saved and sent to coastal cities means less farm runoff reaching the Salton Sea, California's biggest lake. It has lost a third of its water in 25 years. The bare lakebed sends up dust laced with pesticides, heavy metals, arsenic, and selenium. Imperial County leads California in childhood asthma hospital visits. Nearly 130,000 people, a third of them children in a mostly low-income Latino community, live within 15 miles of the shrinking shore. Sylvia Paz of Alianza Coachella Valley said it plainly. I do not think it is fair that one particular community that is already struggling with pollution has to carry the weight of saving the Colorado River for everyone else. The question nobody wants to answer is why the river keeps making less water even when the snow looks decent. And this is the part of the story that decides everything going forward. In 2025, the mountains above the Colorado River got 92% of their normal snowpack. On paper, that looks almost fine. Lake Powell got 49% of its average inflow, not even half. The snow was there, the water was not. It dried up, soaked into bone-dry soil, or turned straight to vapor in the air before reaching a stream. The gap between snow on the ground and water in the reservoir is the single most important number in Western water right now, and it is getting wider every year. The reason is well known. A 2020 study in the journal Science showed that Colorado River flow drops by roughly 9.3% for every single degree Celsius of warming. Less snow means darker ground. Darker ground soaks up more sunlight. More sunlight drives more drying. Water that used to reach the river now vanishes before it gets there. The upper Colorado Basin has already warmed more than 2.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Scientists have mostly stopped calling this a drought. Brad Udall of Colorado State University uses the word aridification, which means it is not short-term. It keeps going until greenhouse gas pollution stops. Forecasts show heat-driven flow losses of roughly 17% by 2050, and as much as 25 to 55% by the end of the century under high pollution levels. The river is not going to bounce back to what it was. The question is how much further it falls. Meanwhile, 30 federally recognized tribes in the basin hold rights to roughly 3.2 million acre-feet per year, about 25% of the river's average supply. They were left out entirely from the original 1922 talks that divided the river. An estimated 65% of their water rights sit unused, not because tribes do not need the water, but because decades of federal neglect left them without the pipes to use it. On the 27,000 square mile Navajo Nation, 30 to 40% of homes still have no running water. In the small Navajo community of Westwater, Utah, 21 homes finally got running water in March 2025 after waiting nearly 25 years. Community leader Thomas Chi choked up while turning on his faucet. "It took a whole lifetime just about," he said. "I know my grandparents would be happy." A $5.1 billion deal was put forward in 2024 to settle decades of water claims by the Navajo Nation, Hopi Tribe, and San Juan Southern Paiute Tribe. It would pay for a $1.75 billion pipeline to bring Colorado River water to the reservations and set up trust funds totaling over $3.8 billion. Navajo President Bu Nigrin said, "For too long, our Navajo people have lived without piped water. This is wrong." The bill is currently waiting in Congress. In November 2025, the Colorado River Indian tribes voted as one to grant the river itself legal personhood under tribal law for the 100 miles it flows through their land. Chairwoman Amelia Flores said, "We see the river as a living being. Tribal nations are no longer waiting to be asked to the table. They are building their own." If you are finding this useful, subscribe. We cover geography and earth science events like this as they happen, with the full picture you need to actually follow what is going on. So what is actually being done right now to close the gap? Las Vegas has become the world's model for city water savings. The city sends nearly every drop of indoor water back into Lake Mead through return flow credits. It cut water use by 58% since 2002, while its population doubled, and uses only 62% of its Colorado River share. General Manager John Ensminger tells people they live in the most water-safe city in the desert Southwest. The city banned fancy grass, pays people to rip out lawns, and cleans wastewater to near drinking quality before pumping it back to the reservoir. But city use is only 20 to 30% of total water taken from the river. Even if every city on the Colorado ran like Vegas, the math still does not close. The 70 to 80% used by farming is where the real volume sits. And getting farmers to use less water while their lives depend on it is a very different problem than banning lawn grass. Phoenix is building its first plants to turn used water back into drinking water, the Cave Creek and North Gateway sites, with $179 million in federal money. Clean drinking water from this process is expected by 2027 to 2030. Southern California's Metropolitan Water District is building a $3.4 billion recycled water plant that can make 155,000 acre-feet per year. These are real projects already going up that will deliver real water. The problem is size. 155,000 acre-feet matters for a city. It barely dents a 4.5 million acre-foot gap. Cloud seeding programs across Colorado and Utah are already running, with Utah running the country's biggest program. Results suggest up to 15% more snowfall and maybe 200,000 extra acre-feet of yearly stream flow at roughly $3 per acre-foot. The numbers sound good until you remember the basin's gap is counted in millions of acre-feet. Colorado's Amy Ostiak said the problem is many times bigger than what any weather work can fix. Saving water on farms is still the cheapest option. A 2025 study found it costs as little as $69 to $193 per acre-foot, compared to $2,000 or more for turning saltwater into freshwater. The Federal System Conservation Pilot Program has spent $44.6 million and saved 101,000 acre-feet in the Upper Basin. Saltwater plants have been pitched, including ones that would pull from the Sea of Cortez in Mexico, but they cost $3 to $5.5 billion each, make fairly small amounts, and are still about 10 years away. Every one of these fixes helps. None of them close the gap on their own, and the gap is not holding steady. It is growing because every added degree of warming steals another 9.3% of the river's flow. There is no building project that outpaces that math forever. As of March 2026, Lake Powell sits 40 feet above the level where Glen Canyon Dam stops making power. The 7 states that share the Colorado River have no deal on what happens after December. The 2026 runoff forecast stands at 52% of normal. And 40 million people depend on a system running under rules written during the wettest stretch in 500 years for a climate that no longer exists. The October deadline is not just paperwork. It is the last planned off-ramp before the next crisis hits. And the river is not waiting for anyone to be ready.